So, welcome to POC Stories. Today, I'm recording Celine Ingwak, and we're going to talk about the effects of climate change in Greenland. And yeah, so can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Sukaningwak. I am from Greenland and I am Inuk. And I'm an Indigenous rights activist and an artist.
Okay. And for those who doesn't know about Greenland, can you a bit introduce Greenland, if it is like a country, territory, or?
So it's geographically, it's actually an island, the biggest island on Earth, but it is seen as a country, and we are still under Denmark. So we have self-government, but we are still ruled by Denmark. Yeah.
Okay. And what are the most spoken languages in Greenland?
Yeah. So the official language is Kalaallisut, which is the Inuit dialect of Greenland, also called Greenlandic. And then we also speak Danish. Actually, it's probably the most spoken language in jobs and the government and stuff like that. And then it's actually really funny, but the youngest generations have started to speak English like all the time, and it's so funny to see.
Okay. And how was for you growing up in Greenland?
So yeah, it was. I mean, for me, it was just normal because I didn't know anything else. But it was also a bit hard. It was a bit hard growing up here because of all the problems in the society and stuff like that. But also, like, we're very closely tied with nature. So we spend a lot of time with the nature. All summer we're outside in the nature, fishing or hunting or just hanging out. And in the winter, in the north, you go sledding and stuff like that, dog sledding. And here we just really like to be outside in the winter as well, like go for a walk. Some people go hunting as well. My family doesn't really do that in the winter. But yeah. Yeah, so I grew up just being surrounded by nature, actually. Yeah.
Okay. And so then how did you notice like the first climate change on nature in Greenland, for example?
So, sorry. I actually started noticing it like a few years ago. I'd say maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't really think of it at first, but then I started noticing that the weather has changed a lot. Winter, like the winter and summer has started and ended very differently each year now. So a few years ago, it was extremely cold all throughout summer, whereas another year, it was very, very warm already from March, which is also very weird. But also, like, you've started to see some changes in, like, the animal behavior as well. The reindeers have started to behave differently, and some fish have started to come at different times. So, we have seasons for our animals. because we've always known when they're ready to be gathered and stuff like that. But like some fish, for example, have started to come a lot later than usual, meaning that like the climate has definitely changed in some way, making their behavior change as well.
How does the climate change affect the locals in daily life, like in activities, for example, regarding fishing or anything else?
Mm-hmm. So, economically, it's actually done a lot of harm to the hunters, for example. So the hunters in North Greenland, because of climate change, like the ice not, like there's been a lot of melted ice and stuff like that. So the hunters in North Greenland haven't had any income at all since August, for example, because of climate change. And you don't see, so like the hunters and fishermen in general have a very hard time with their income and stuff like that. And I personally don't see that much other change, but you definitely hear a lot of stories from all around that, oh, this has changed, or this has changed. Like there's something different. Like we're definitely storytellers. We talk a lot with each other, and you hear that a lot, that things are different. Yeah.
Okay. And do you think, like in general, like the Danish government give enough support regarding climate change in Greenland, or?
No, not at all. I mean, I really don't hear anything from the Danish government, to be honest, regarding climate change in Greenland, other than like campaigns and like, oh, let's save Greenland, the ice is melting. But you hear that all around the world. So it's, I don't really hear that much from them. And the laws that are on Greenland right now regarding hunting and fishing are actually still restricted, making it way harder for them to get any income. And like all you hear is really just like, oh, use less plastic. And then you hear the government in Greenland like, oh, we stopped using like cutlery that you used once. We've started washing them so that they can be reused and stuff like that. And like those really, really simple things that in reality don't do anything at all. And then they've also just started this project with mining in South Greenland. So they're going to be mining stuff like uranium and stuff like that. And a few years ago, they did a test to see how it would go. And just with the test, it polluted so much that like the reindeers and the sheep from South Greenland, their livers and stuff like that turned black. So, now next year they're going to start the project. They're going to start mining. And, it's just been approved because from my perspective, the Danish government doesn't really care about the Greenlandic environment. They just want to get money out of it from the fishermen and from mining. Yeah.
Okay. And I've seen you participated to the Arctic Summit. And can you explain what is it about?
Yeah, so it was the Arctic Leaders Summit in Finland last year. And then we had the first Arctic Youth Leaders Summit where all the indigenous youth from the Arctic gathered to have something to say to all the leaders at the actual Arctic Leaders Summit. So we discussed a lot of things like what do we have to say as indigenous youth? What are our issues that the elders don't really see or listen to? So we talked about like stuff like food sovereignty, and education and mental health, and of course the environment. So we told the elders about what we personally think as indigenous youth, what are like the actual issues we need to look at right now.
Okay. And what do you think are the most important issues to look at?
So, of course, there are a lot of important issues around the Arctic, but for Greenland, it's definitely the educational system. It's only taught in Danish. So, because of that, only around a third to half-ish of the generations actually get an education because they don't speak Danish or they're not good enough at speaking Danish, so they can't get an education, meaning they usually go into either hunting and fishing or criminality, which is a very huge problem actually. And then there's mental health. We have a lot of suicides each year, and sometimes they come in like where you have like 5 to 10 suicides in a month or so, which is a lot for only 56,000 people. And also with the food in Greenland, it's like getting your traditional food is very expensive, for example. So you kind of have to go, if you don't have money for traditional foods, which is probably the healthiest food you can get here, you have to eat things like store-bought pizza or stuff like that, like junk food from the freezer aisle, like stuff like that, which is have no nutrients at all. And then if you have a lot of money, you have enough food for like vegetables and stuff like that.
Do you think like it is necessary to organize those conferences, or do you think personally it's still like useful to organize those conferences, or what could be more useful?
I mean, I would say it's definitely important to still have some conferences so that you can, as long as you invite the people that it's actually about, so that you can hear their stories and like what issues do they see, and what do they need from the people who have power. If you don't include them, then it's kind of it's pretty useless if you don't include them at all. But at the same time, you also need to, like, conferences are very, like, elite people, like people with power or, you know, stuff like that. And that's where I kind of get, like, yeah, it's like, I don't really like it that much. I'm like, well, if you're actually going to have a change, you should include the people that it's actually about, and like, go into the communities, talk with them, and maybe make them understand as well what changes they could do, because you can't really just, like, you'll see a campaign about, like, oh, useless plastic or stuff like that, and then you're just like, oh, cool, now it's hit Greenland, now we need to do it as well. But in reality, that doesn't really do any change. So, like, like, long story short, like, it's definitely a necessity to still have conferences. It's still a good idea, as long as you include the people from the communities, and that you also, whatever you spoke about, you bring that forth to the communities, and, like, that, just make sure to include them for sure.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel worried about your future and climate change in Greenland?
Definitely, yeah, I do. I'm actually very worried because, you know, nature is our life. Nature is a part of who we are, and the same with hunting and gathering berries and fishing, and it's just like, it's who we are. And just seeing some changes in that now has been very worrying, such as, like, the fish's behavior changing has been, like, it's been more difficult for us already now to get what we usually have. So I'm very worried about what the future will bring us with the climate changes, because if we already see the hunters struggling now and not having any income for, like, 3 to 4 months, what will it look like in the future if we don't get any solutions for them now? And, like, yeah, also, like, just a lot of our culture and traditions will be lost and will be changed, or will just be a part of our memory at some point. Because the nature is such a vital part for our traditions as well. So yeah, it's definitely very worrying to already see changes now, and then thinking, like, okay, how will it look like then in the future? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What would you say to people who don't believe in climate change?
If you don't believe in it, that's fine. But you just still have to accept that it is happening. Like, it's kind of like saying, like, I don't believe in women's periods or something like that. Like, okay, sure, then don't believe in it, but it's still happening. You can't really do anything about it. I don't really care about people believing it or not. As long as there are a lot of people who are doing something about it. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that's kind of what I want to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else you would like to say, or?
I mean, I think like something that I would like to add is like, so, you know, as in Greenland, we tend to get a lot of attacks, from like vegans from other countries and stuff like that for eating, like seal or reindeer and stuff like that. Well, not necessarily vegans, but it's usually vegans who do it. But just like animal activists and stuff like that, we tend to get a lot of hate from them for doing that. But a thing that I would like for them to understand is it's when it comes to Greenland, it is the only like sustainable food actually, because if we're gonna eat like vegetarians or vegans, that means that we have to spend a lot more money than we have, first of all. And second of all of our like foods that are vegan friendly, vegetarian friendly are imported from outside, meaning that it's actually polluting a lot if we eat that way. It's definitely possible if you have money for it. But it's also like, it's polluting a lot, meaning that it's just so much more sustainable to eat traditionally here. And that's just a thing I really, really want for people outside to understand, that we can't live the same way as you guys do, if we want to care about the environment. Yeah.